Election day.
25,000 candidates standing for 8,000 seats in 5,000 wards. That's this year's local elections in a nutshell.
Sue Gray.
Did she break any code of conduct?
And fascism in the UK. These are the interesting times. Hello everyone, my name's Matt Johnston and welcome to the Wednesday Interesting Times, which is a show that likes to take a sideways swipe at politics right here in the UK. So what we will be talking about tonight is voter ID. Okay, I appreciate people will start switching off as soon as the video goes on for their own reasons, and I don't want this to be a watch till the end bit. Before we go any further, please, if you don't watch the rest of the video, please watch the next few seconds. First things first, let's clear up a bit of confusion.
And I want to remind you, if there are elections in your area, you must take photographic ID with you for the first time, or you might not be able to vote.
No, there's no might. You won't be allowed to vote. 100%. You absolutely need to take both your polling card and an acceptable form of ID with you. The acceptable forms of ID are here, so pause the video. Okay, if you don't have any of these forms of ID, then unfortunately the deadline has passed to apply for a voter authority certificate. But if you do, then please do make sure the photo ID you carry has the best current likeness of you and that you know all the basic information on the ID, as yes, you may be asked questions on it. So, on to the beginnings of this mess, and so many questions. So let's start with who, as in whose idea was it to come up with the voter ID? It's a Conservative Party's idea, of course it was, and comes on the back of the 2016 report by Conservative, at the time MP, and at the time anti-corruption champion Eric Pickles. Other recipients of this appointment from the Ministry of Irony include Matt Hancock, and currently John Penrose, husband of Dido Harding. I mean, that's a whole separate video, but focus. Let's get back to the matter at hand. Eric Pickles, looking exactly like you would expect a Conservative to look, commissioned a report called Securing the Ballot, Review into Electoral Fraud, which I think we can all agree is a pretty provocative title. The report was commissioned following an election court judgment in 2015, which barred the mayor of Tower Hamlets, Lutfur Rahman, for a number of illegal practices for an election he won in 2014. Let's deal with that. Lutfur Rahman won the mayor election for Tower Hamlets in 2014, but there followed an investigation which found he had played race and religious cards and was guilty of corrupt practice, including bribery and the abuse of public money. And the police didn't press charges. Indeed, a lengthy police inquiry decided there was insufficient evidence for a criminal prosecution. Nevertheless, Lutfur Rahman was banned for 5 years for running for office. So, Eric Pickles made some recommendations, including voter ID. It has been championed by, amongst others, Steve Baker, the MP, who was for a while head of the ERG. Yep, that ERG.
How many government ministers are in it?
I'm not going to say how many government ministers are in it because it is essentially a group of members of Parliament. It's a
secret society, is it?
It's not a secret society. It's a European research group.
So why won't you say how many ministers are in it?
It's a group of MPs who are supporting the government to deliver a Brexit which works for everybody, representing all strands.
So why can't you tell us who's in it?
If
we pay for it, we ought to know who's in it.
And, yeah, that's Steve Baker.
It wasn't a stupid question, Steve. You know it. What a cunt.
He's gone on record to say that voter fraud or personation are widespread. He's been pretty light on detail, though.
My objective tonight, Mr. Speaker, is to ensure free and fair, open and lawful elections take place in the UK without cheating. I wish to make it clear up front that the fundamental reason for this debate is to stand with the law-abiding majority across all sections of my diverse constituency, including EU nationals and people of Asian descent, against the corruption perpetrated against them by certain individuals. Rules are being broken by or on behalf of particular individuals. I'm sure of the account that I give tonight, Mr. Speaker. I could easily identify persons involved under the privileges of this House, but I do not intend tonight to unnecessarily use that privilege.
Again, anecdotal, much like in Eric Pickles' report. So the next question, why not? What's so hard about applying for a voter ID? Well, the problem being, in an age when we're trying to encourage more people to exercise their democratic right, this is doing the opposite. In 2018 and 2019, they ran a pilot scheme involving 6 areas in England that required people to bring photo ID, and 2,000 individuals were turned away, and only about 800 people returned later to vote. Which sort of makes sense, as people do have other things to do and tend to go to cast their votes at the same time as doing something else. Like, if you're going to vote Labour, you might do it at the same time as starting your factory shift. Lib Dem, you might do it at the same time as going to university. And Conservative Party, you might do it at the same time as working out what the hell went so wrong in your life. And for these elections, we won't actually know how many have been turned away, as the meters and greeters that will be positioned outside of polling booths to stop people who don't have the correct ID from voting will not be expected to keep numbers. And as always seems to be the way, it's the most disenfranchised that are adversely affected. People will tell you that it's the young that are likely to miss out, but that's not the case.
Well, what the Conservatives have done, they've said that older people who have a bus pass can use that as a form of identity, but young people who have a young person's rail card or travel card can't use that.
But let's look at these concerns. It's true that over 60s Oyster cards can be used as voter ID and that 18 plus Oyster cards can't. And on this, the government has this explanation.
They are different. The 60 plus eligibility is significantly more requirements. There is a requirement for a passport, there's a requirement for a driver's license.
This is right. Getting a 60 plus Oyster card is more stringent. And while younger people can't use their Oysters to vote, government commissioned research has found that 99% of 18 to 29-year-olds already have a form of photo ID that can be used.
It makes sense. If you're under 25 and you want to go, I don't know, for a boogie down the nightclub, or you want to drink a baby sham or martini, you're going to need ID, or alternatively a time machine. Other marginalised groups that don't have the correct ID include the unemployed, which amount to about 11%, those renting from a local authority, 13%, or housing association, 12%, as well as disabled people, 8%. So next question, and it's the one everybody's asking, which is why? Why put in place a barely workable set of ideas, which, according to Electoral Reform Society's Chief Executive Darren Hughes, is...
Well, I think it's a solution looking for a problem.
It's also been described as a sledgehammer to crack a nut, or a national obsession involving thousands of personnel and costing approximately £100 million to put a hat on someone's head. And this whole business could cost the taxpayer some £18 million a year to solve a problem that isn't a problem. Since 2018, there have been 9 convictions leading police to issue 6 cautions, which just makes sense. If you're a criminal and you want to rig an election, the last way you'll do it would be personation. If you manage to somehow get hold of an electoral roll, you would then need to print off a whole load of voting cards and vote? And let's be honest, there are only so many disguises you can use at a polling station before someone says, hang on a minute. Far easier to slap any old bollocks on the side of a bus where everyone can see it. Also, postal votes are clearly much more open to voter personation abuse. But even that is rare. In over 20 years, there have been 9 cases of postal fraud. Less than 1 every 2 years, which again makes sense. It's like stealing pens from Argos. Yeah, it's illegal. Yeah, it's easy to do, but it's not going to help you open a stationery shop anytime soon. So why? Eric Pickles, the anti-corruption champion, actually asked for electoral practices be brought into his remit. And he also expressed a disdain for the Independent Electoral Commission, who up until 2022 were responsible for overseeing fair elections up and down the country. But in 2022, they became a little less independent when the Conservative government used its majority to place the Election Commission under the supervision of a government minister with new powers, including getting it to avoid looking into anything inconvenient. And let's be honest, the last 13 years of Conservative governments have been, putting it mildly, pretty inconvenient. And they've started, as they mean to go on, by replacing all supplementary elections for mayors, which tend to return Labour candidates, to first past the post, which tend to return Conservative ones. At this point, the foxes haven't just been placed in charge of the chicken coop, they've opened up for KFC there. And remember Lutfur the Tower Hamlets mayor who was barred from office for 5 years? He's now the mayor of Tower Hamlets. after being elected in a "screw you Westminster, we do what we want" message from the Tower Hamlets voters. And whatever you think of that decision, voter ID will make no difference to that. But there is widespread fraud in elections. In 2019, the Conservative Party won a landslide on promising to get Brexit done. They didn't. In 2017, Theresa May promised a strong and stable government. I mean, what the actual hell? The last two prime ministers, we've not even had any say over whatsoever. Put simply, if this government is serious about fraud in elections, then find out where individuals or organisations are getting their funding from and make it public. Also, make it mandatory that everyone who wants to be Prime Minister takes part in a televised debate. And make manifestos legally binding with personal financial penalties to those that don't meet them. Put simply, don't give us a free word slogan, give us a free and fair democracy. And that's it. No time to talk about Keir Starmer having a not great couple of days. The Cabinet Office have been looking into his job offer to Sue Gray, the former civil servant, and whether it breached any rules by talking to Keir Starmer while still in office. Keir has said that he is confident that she didn't breach any rules, which, as regular viewers of this show will know, means she definitely breached the rules. Boris Johnson and his allies have jumped on this and said that this was a definite attempt to smear him. Indeed. And it really is quite wrong of Sue Gray to shove drinks in his hand during those lockdown parties, to shove him in a JCB in 2019 to tell the electorate that he would get Brexit done, and also to cheat on his wife with an American entrepreneur by shoving... Not sure what he'd be shoving there. Starmer also had to row back on a promise he made to scrap tuition fees, blaming the government's piss-poor handling of the economy. Fair enough, but it's not the first time you've done it, Sir Keir. You've also abandoned your pledges of free movement with the EU, raising taxes on the top 5% of earners, and taking utilities into public ownership. He's done so many about faces, it's not clear if he's facing left or right. Here's hoping he keeps one pledge. No time to talk about the fact that on Saturday, our king will officially become our king. And preparations have already started, as the Stone of Destiny has made its way south from Edinburgh. Well, we don't want to find ourselves short of a stone, do we? I mean, hashtag embarrassing. And the other jobs have been handed out as to who's doing what. Lord Houghton of Richmond will be carrying the sword of temporal justice. Duke of Buccleuch and Queensberry will be carrying the Swordsbury Cross, and Lord Tanos of Titan will be carrying the Infinity Gauntlet. We will then all be expected to take part in a King Charles loyalty chant. I think I'd rather take part in a football chant. Indeed. In fact, I'll show him as much loyalty as he showed his first wife. Thank you all so much for watching, and if you haven't already, please do subscribe and hit all the notifications bell, and I'll see you all Sunday. Take care.